Well, this is my first time doing something like this. It's gonna be a recollection of my summer's Dungeons and Dragons, the first time I've ever played. So let's start out. Day one, we kind of were doing 3.5, third edition, not really a whole lot of fourth, just because out of the people that had played before, they'd all never played fourth edition, like straight full edition, full fourth edition. And so the first week was kind of like, yeah, we'll get our characters together, and we didn't actually really do a whole lot. We went on one quest, but I had to leave early because it was midnight and I was tired. And anyway, so next week we, well, actually, I think I should probably go back and tell about who was in the traveling company. It was myself, Conrad, Mordecai, and can't think of the other feller's name. I know his current character, his name is Mikhail, so we'll just call him Mikhail. So it's Conrad, Mordecai, myself, my name was Raven, and Mikhail. And we didn't really have a backstory the first week, but the second week we came back and by that time we had a bunch of 4th edition PDF files that we got legally, and so we decided to use 4th edition, and it was better because as a first time D&D player, I'd rather play something that's all 4th edition or all 3.5 or all 3, whatever. And so it started to go well. We did our character sheets. We started to go on little quests, and I think my older brother came in, Wisp, and so it was Wisp, Mordecai, Raven, myself, and Conrad, and then there was the DM. So there were 6 of us. It was a good sized party, and my backstory was that I was a ranger. I lived deep in the forest around the town of Riverhaven, which is where we were. And I had come into town for the first time in, I don't know, first time that season, and was selling some hides, leathers, all this, that, and the other. And Mikhail, or his previous character, he had been in town a couple days. He was a sorcerer, kind of doing some odd jobs for people. Wisp was Mikhail was I was a human. Mikhail was a human sorcerer, or wizard, or I don't know. There's too many different magic users to count. Conrad was a traveling cleric. I guess he didn't really like the clerical monastery, wherever he came from, so he was a traveling cleric. And then there was Wisp, who was a drow rogue, was also coming into Riverhaven. Didn't really tell us why. We didn't really know a whole lot about Wisp to begin with anyways, but him and Conrad were kind of coming in together, and then he spotted Conrad, so he skirted around town and came through their side. Mordecai. Whew. He was the main head prostitute of the brothel, I suppose. He kind of had his women and men. So Mikhail's previous character was kind of sitting at the bar. I was outside. I had a little stand that I was selling my wares, and Mikhail was talking to the barkeep about, hey, do you have any jobs for me? Because he's been kind of doing some odd jobs, like I said. And the barkeep was like, yeah, I've got a rat problem in the cellar. I didn't know, or I kind of like to get them gone. And they were discussing the terms of of everything. And by this time, Wisp had entered shortly after Conrad into the bar. Conrad walked up to the bar next to Mikhail and was getting a drink or food or whatever. Wisp kind of went and sat in the corner. I was outside, and eventually the barkeep went back into the storeroom with Mikhail to kind of show him the rat problem, and Wisp noticed that they were gone, so he went sneaky, threw up his orb of darkness or whatever, and kind of sneaked in there with them. Mordecai had come out to my little stand and was wanting to buy some leather, but not for armor. That was kind of a little joke we had, and Conrad was still stewing over his drink. So anyways, Mikhail and the barkeep, they go into the storeroom, and Mikhail's being silly. He's casting all these spells to try to get rid of the rats, which he can't see, and then Wisp misrolls a stealth check and ends up exposing himself, and instantly Mikhail did his orb of light, which blinded Wisp, and so he backed into a cupboard or something and made a lot of ruckus. So Conrad had ran in, and Mordecai he had come back from my stall, and was kind of like, hey, what's going on? And after Mordecai had come and bought some stuff, my character had gone into the bar, and so I heard the ruckus as well, and so I was kind of curious, and while all that was going on, I was about to try to steal some stuff, and I looked down at my character sheet and I noticed my thievery, I had a +2 or a +1, so I kind of forgot about that, and I changed my tactic to I was just gonna go see what was going on as well. I mean, it'd be kind of weird in a real medieval time setting for there to be a lot of ruckus and everyone kind of rush in. I would think that it'd be like, yeah, whatever. So our actions were kind of not really medieval-ish, well, even today. But anyways, so we all get in there, and there's no rats in there. The barkeep's like, I don't even know why you've been casting these spells. The barkeep was the DM, obviously, I suppose. I don't even know why you've been casting these spells. There's no rats in here. And Mikhail was like, well, you said there was rats in the cellar, and the barkeep's like, well, this isn't the cellar, this is just the storeroom. So we end up seeing the door to the cellar, and my first move was to immediately run down the stairs into complete darkness, and we entered combat, and I couldn't see anything, so I was actually completely useless down there. I pulled out my sword. Nothing really I was able to do. And so Wisp, who was the drow, since he had dark vision, he went down there and attacked a few of the rats with his crossbow. And Mikhail, being the sorcerer of greatness, decided he was going to cast a burst spell, and ended up he killed a good portion of rats, so I applaud him for that, but he also just took about half my health, and so this kind of led to a little bit of disdain, if that's the right word, between myself and not only Mikhail, also Mikhail's character. Like, so, I mean, let me reword that, because I'm referring to people as their character's name, so Mikhail's host. And this also kind of started to grow my backstory, because I kind of used that as like my distaste for Mikhail. I started to use that as, oh, maybe part of my backstory was my parents were killed by magic, or my parents always taught me magic was bad, or something. I was gonna include that somehow in my backstory. But anyways, so I said screw this and started my way back upstairs, but only made it about halfway due to my speed and whatnot. And so Wisp made it upstairs before me, and he still had a rat on him. So I went upstairs, or I eventually went upstairs. Oh, by the way, Conrad was eating a turkey leg the whole time, and Mordecai was still doing his thing. And so I walk back up, or I run back up the stairs, slam the door, and there's still a rat on Wisp. So I had gotten a whip. I decided, since I was a ranger, in 4th edition, or in 3.5, there's a whip in the character book, but there's not, or in the player's handbook, excuse me. Probably going to get some flack for calling it the character book. In the player's handbook, but I think in 4th edition, from what I've seen, there's not really a whip. So I had talked to the DM. I was like, well, I want a whip, but since there isn't one, I'm going to say, since I'm a ranger and I work with leather, that I made my own whip. And so I pulled out my whip and whipped the rat on Wisp. It was pretty funny. It shouldn't do that much damage. Shouldn't have killed the rat, but because the whip does nominal damage, it's pretty much just something to play around with. But so I killed the rat, and excuse me, I apologize. And killed a rat. Mikhail ended up using another spell, killing the rest of the rats, and so I'm sitting there with my back against the door, and Mikhail's banging on the door, and I know it's him, but I'm still kind of ticked off because I bloodied because of his idiocracy. Well, no, actually I wasn't quite bloodied. Otherwise I guess I didn't quite lose half my health, but anyways, it was a little upsetting. So I was kind of holding the door, and finally he rolled high enough that he was able to bust open the door behind me, and so the barkeep was like, hey, thanks for doing all this. I'll give you guys free rooms and free meals and whatnot. And so we go and collect our meals, and since I'm still kind of brooding over the whole being hurt by Mikhail, I pull out my whip again just to, because it didn't really do damage. And so I went to whip Mikhail in the back of the head because of his stupidity, and I ended up rolling a 1 or 2. And so the DM said I missed, the whip like hit the rafter and came back and smacked me in the face. So this kind of led to a deeper sense of hatred towards Mikhail. And so I go upstairs into my room, and I'm brooding. And anyways, so next morning comes along, and we are talking to somebody, and they mention that there's a what was the story? Oh, no, actually there's something different. We wanted to play on a Tuesday, because generally we played on Wednesdays, but we wanted to play on Tuesday just for fun. And so we met on Tuesday, and since everyone couldn't make it, we did a little side quest, because by that time I had looked through all the 4th edition books and noticed that there's more classes for Ranger, so I wanted to be a Beastmaster instead of a double-bladed, like the 2 longsword type guy. And so I wanted to get a beast, and so we talked to, or the barkeep had mentioned in hindsight to somebody, we overheard him talking about dead bodies disappearing, so we went to the barkeep, and he's like, well, go talk to the mortician. So we went and talked to the mortician, and noticed that it was all magic. And if you ever played Dark Souls, this little side quest was based on that. Apparently, by the DM later said that it was based on that. Anyways, so we talked to the mortician, a priest, and someone else. Goodness gracious, I apologize. And they kind of led us off to the east, northeast, and so we followed this path, and there was a couple signs that said, "Hey, don't enter. You've entered our land." And we come upon this one sign that says, "Look out" or something like that, and there's a bush right next to it. So I was kind of, oh, maybe I should check this out. So I rolled a high perception, and turns out there was a like a ladder underneath that bush that went down. And so we're climbing down this ladder, and the DM's like, oh, and you get 15 feet up, or you're 15 feet from the bottom, and the ladder ends. And I was like, well, we could jump, and the source was like, ooh, I want to jump, which I don't think he understood. I think it's for every 5 or 6 feet, 5 or 10 feet you do 1d6 falling damage. And I was like, wait, I got an idea. And luckily I had bought a climber's kit, and so I hooked the grappling hook to the last rung and shimmied down the rope. And the DM was like, that's actually a really good idea. Most of the people who I play with would have just jumped and taken the damage. So we get down, and there's a couple more creepy signs, and we're going through this narrow. Goodness, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm so tired. Anyways, we go down this hallway. We get to the bottom, and there's three different stretches. And so we go down one of the hallways because we see a little light. Actually, we see a light on one end of the hallway, and we decided to be ironic and go down the other end. So we went an opposite way, and we get down, and there we walk in, and there's two humanoid figures. They look human to us, but we don't exactly know. And they're just banging their heads on the wall. And as someone who's never played Dark Souls, I really had no idea what was going on. I actually didn't know, like myself, didn't know if they were zombies or not, or undead or whatever. And so I kind of went up, and I was right behind one of them, and nothing really happened. And so I decided to poke one on the shoulder, and luckily my reflex was high enough that I was able to dodge it. It ended up like crashing, slamming past me and crashing into the wall, and kind of just slumped there. And then so I pulled out my bow and shot it twice. Whew. And did damage, but not a whole lot actually, because it was a zombie, turns out. And so Mikhail, he ran up to the other one and was like, well, I'm going to do the same thing. So he pushed it, and the thing slammed by and into the wall. And then he asked me to get out of the way, and so I kind of moved a few steps back, and he used a fire spell again and set the zombies on fire, and one of them died, and the other was like on fire, but like flailing around, and so he was catching all the moss and the dead leaves that were around on the floor on fire, and so it was starting to make quite a dangerous environment. So the next spell Mikhail used was a freezing spell, and so he froze it. And we walked up to one of the zombie that we had burnt, and there was nice clothes on the thing that we probably could have sold for quite a few gold, but since we had killed it by fire, it had ruined it. But there was a couple like gems, like someone we buried with, and So we started to kind of get an idea that these were maybe the bodies that were disappearing, and so it was starting. We were starting to kind of get an idea of what was going on, and so we went back out and down another hallway, and there was 3 or 4 zombie dogs that we ended up defeating. It was myself and Mikhail that did most of the work. Conrad, at this point, was still like a hoity-toity cleric that didn't really want to do a whole lot of combat, and so he had a rapier. He stabbed one of the dogs in the eye and did nominal damage. But so that was that, and we defeat those dogs, and we keep walking, and there's a huge chimera, the 3-headed dog, and I myself wanted to